And I think that's going to lead us right into our next topic, which is the signing of linebacker Kwon Alexander for the same reasons of get this guy in that they wanted. They've been trying to sign for well before this, for weeks now. Get him involved, see what he can do, get him in the system around the other players, and see who comes out on top, because the linebacker position is one of the biggest questions on the team still.
Yeah, it really is. I think no question bigger than how are they going to use all three of these guys with CJ, Quincy, or actually four guys really, with CJ, Quincy, Kwon, and Sherwood. We were kind of not really suspecting Sherwood to be back this early. And the fact that he were not. The fact that he wasn't even put on the PUP list was extremely impressive. And we have to think that things are kind of in motion where they're looking towards the future with Sherwood and his position as maybe the heir apparent to CJ when he goes. So it's going to be interesting to see how they use all of these guys. And would you say that this position is now a strength?
No, I'm still not going to go that far. I have not had the opportunity yet to sit down and watch Kwon Alexander's most recent games and really break him down. And so I'm not going to sit here and give my full opinion on how good or not good I think he is compared to other people. I will say overall, players, if they're that good, don't sit available this long. Usually, they usually get signed pretty quickly. Every now and again, you'll have some quality guys last, but there's usually a reason for it. And it's usually because those guys are getting to pick where they go. I don't think this was much of a situation of Kwon getting to pick where he goes, as more so of pick where he goes between the teams that are still interested.
Yeah.
And the Jets were one of those teams. He has familiarity with Robert Saleh from San Francisco, and Saleh says it himself. They brought him in because he's a great locker room player. He gives a lot of effort, a lot of strain, as Saleh says a lot. Good communicator, knows the system. Is going to be able to help the young guys in the room, provide relief, can play either Will or Sam, being strong side or weak side linebacker. So, yeah, good addition to the room overall if he's capable of doing all of those things and he doesn't have to waste time learning a new defense for he's in a system that's already familiar. But is this going to be a strength now? I don't know, because I'm still worried about CJ Mosley and how he's going to last throughout another whole season. I'm hopeful for Quincy Williams' improvement. And I'm hopeful that, like we've said on the show before, the guys we have coaching our linebackers are some of the best in the league at it. So I'm confident that that's going to lead to improvement. But until I see it, it's a concern. And especially in this system with some of the teams that we play early in the year, those linebackers are going to be put to the test. They're going to have to get their hands dirty and really come downhill and try and stop some really good running games. So I'm not quite ready to call it a strength.
No, not yet. Yeah, there's still so many question marks. CJ's only 1 year removed from missing 2 years in a row. So, and it showed last year his ability to go 100% the entire season. And he really didn't come off the field at all. He was pretty much playing 100% in most of the games last year. And Quincy as well. He maybe only took a few plays off. And it seems like we're maybe around 60 to 70% in nickel. So when you factor that,
only two linebackers most of the time.
But now what I was thinking was, is this because that's what they want to do, or is it because they really didn't have anybody else that they really trusted to put out there in a base 4-3 set?
I want to go a little deep on this real quick, if you don't mind, Matt, because I have an interesting take, and I want people to realize something specifically. I don't think it matters, because the main difference between a nickel defense and a base defense for a 4-3 alignment is swapping out a linebacker for a slot corner. So outside of that, the fronts really aren't that different. It's still a 4-down front. You're going to have two linebackers instead of three, which can slightly change things depending on if you're an over front and you're going to have that overhang linebacker on the strong side. But usually the Jets are in cover 3 or a single high look anyway, so they're going to have a safety in the box as that extra man. How it affects the defense structurally is almost non-existent. And really the only difference is, are you having another linebacker that's closer to the box? Because if an offense is in a 3-by-1 or a 3 receiver set and they have 3 guys to one side of the field, that overhang linebacker is going to be widened out. because if they can't just leave the inside slot receiver uncovered and let them run dead up the seam for a wide open touchdown. That guy's going to have to expand, and he's not going to be sitting there in the box like a traditional 3-stack linebacker 4-3 set where all three of your linebackers are right behind your defensive line in the triangle, as they say when you're looking at from an offensive perspective, looking at the linebackers and the corners, the defensive ends. The difference in the defense is really minuscule. And so I would rather, quite honestly, considering offenses running 11 personnel being 3 wide receivers, more common than most others set in the league, and the prevalence of the passing game, I'd rather have the slot corner on the field. And I'd rather have that guy that I can trust to cover those receivers one-on-one and deeper down the field than that extra linebacker who's going to be smaller and faster so he can be better in coverage, and vice versa, making him not as effective at stopping the run and taking on blocks and being a downhill sort of player. So unless that extra Will Sam linebacker, whatever it is so good at coverage and stopping the run that it becomes an advantage to keep them on the field over a slot corner, I'd rather have the slot corner. And you got to remember, our slot corner is Michael Carter II, who's a really good run defender.
Very good.
Who's a great tackler in space, who's able to get off blocks and chase down ball carriers. It's not like you're having this amazing drop off in run defense by having him in the game over another linebacker. So I'm not worried about how it's going to affect things, because I think the Jets are going to primarily play nickel because that's what offenses are doing in the NFL, is spreading things out and throwing the ball. And you need to have 3 corners on the field to counter that. I don't think it's as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. And I think it's just schematically, it's really easy to see why if you understand the schematics of football.
Yeah, I completely see where you're coming from, where structurally it doesn't matter. I think in the context of how it affects the linebackers, though, it's definitely going to affect their snap counts and how
that's the bigger difference.
Yes. So when we're talking about guys like Sherwood, who we expect to have a really big role going forward, is this a detriment to him in him getting the snaps that he needs to really develop?
I think it's insurance, because I think if you're looking at the Jets linebacker core overall, they're one injury away from having nothing but question marks.
Mm-hmm.
If CJ Mosley goes down early, you're looking at 2 guys that were safeties a year and a half ago: Quincy Williams, Kwon Alexander, and Marcel Harris. And there's one other name that I keep forgetting that I know he's a reserve linebacker. He played a little bit last year. Delshon Phillips.
Delshon Phillips, yes.
And Delshon Phillips. That's what you're looking at as your linebacking group. So I think they needed a guy that could come in, and they're saying he could play Will or Sam, because I think he could be insurance for Quincy if Quincy starts slow, if Quincy needs a breather, because as you said, CJ and Quincy played so many dang snaps last year that maybe they don't want to overwork those guys. Maybe they know CJ Mosley ran out of gas towards the end of the year and they want to have another body in that can let him come off the field. And maybe they slide Quincy over to Mike and they put Kwon in with the Will or the Sam, and CJ takes a breather. Maybe they give Sherwood some snaps in relief of CJ to help that out. I think this just gives them more options. And I don't think it's so much a signal of Quincy Williams is bad and we're worried, or CJ Mosley is going to be terrible, or the linebackers are overall are awful and Sherwood's useless and he's not coming along and Nasruddin's not going to do anything. I don't think it's so much anything about that. I think it's insurance, an opportunity to make the team better with a player that fit the system, that already knows the system, that the coaches are already familiar with and comfortable with. And it kind of just all aligned that they had a need for depth. And I don't think it's anything more than that. I think it's a depth signing.
Yeah, I agree. Just based off the contract, just based off of the no real rush to get anything done.
Exactly.
I feel like if it was such a need to get another starter on this defense at linebacker, they would have attacked it a lot earlier and with a lot more ferocity. So the fact that it's kind of been a thing that they've been trying to do, it didn't sound like anything that if it didn't happen, they would have been too bent out of shape about. So yeah, that kind of really points toward it being just depth, adding a guy that they know knows the system, a guy that can step right in and use his vet leadership to really not have there be so much of a drop off if something were to happen to Quincy or CJ. So yeah, that's basically it. I think that Kwon will come in and he'll. I think we even said this before, how Kwon being here might not help as much on the field as it might off the field. How he really just
Absolutely.
brings a layer of leadership to this team that him and CJ together with these young guys can really just help the whole group as a whole.
Yeah. The last 2 points I want to make on this, one of them you just said, veteran leadership. There really isn't any other veteran in the room outside of CJ. It's all a bunch of young guys and guys that have had a couple of years in the league, but not too much starting experience. So they needed somebody else that can be a leader, that can be a guy in the classroom to explain things, a person to go to as a young player to ask questions and to learn more about the transition. And another guy specifically for the 2 players that I want to highlight next, in Jamie and Sherwood and Quincy Williams, that's a smaller, lighter linebacker that's played the position that these coaches and Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich have crafted and know how to coach so well under these same coaches. So it's the perfect guy to come in and tutor your young players. Not to mention, the Jets love Quincy Williams and Jamie and Sherwood. They love them. The coaching staff is obsessed with both of these guys. If you listen to any of them talk, Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich raved about Quincy Williams when he was first signed off waivers and how they both had great grades on him as a linebacker prospect, how they would have loved to work with him and draft him and develop him, and saw the potential that he had and knew that with their coaching prowess and how they can build guys up from the raw athletic talents they are, that they could have something really special. They loved him. Absolutely loved him. You flip over to Jamie and Sherwood. Jamie and Sherwood was the first defender ever drafted under Robert Saleh. Point blank, period. Their first pick on defense as a defensive coaching staff, as a defensive head coach. This was Jamie and Sherwood, and he was drafted to be their heir at middle linebacker, the future of their defense, the Fred Warner that they wanted to have. These guys aren't just going to be tossed aside because Kwon Alexander's walking in at the end of July.
No.
They're not just going to be forgotten about. This isn't we got Kwon, cool. Well, we don't have to worry about those guys anymore. No, not in the slightest. This is another guy to come in and help these 2 young players that they have a lot of hopes and aspirations for in the very near future. So like you said, Matt, it may not have too much of an impact on the field, but I think it's a lot more about the impact off the field, as well as providing depth and insurance in case they have an injury at a position that's very contact heavy.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can't have this myopic view that Kwon coming in on a 1-year contract means the end of Sherwood or even Nazarlead for that matter.
No.
They still have 2 years under their belt to really make a statement. So yeah, 1 year does not make a decision to throw them out.
No, not at all. And I don't think that 1 year of bringing in another player with familiarity in the system really says anything about their progress or otherwise, because the Jets needed linebacker depth well before Kwon Alexander was signed. Whether they signed him or somebody else, they still needed depth of the position because they didn't have too much experience. Now they have more. It's as simple as that.